This edition of MacVoices is sponsored by ProXPN, the virtual private network service. Protect your internet by securing your connection and get up to 50% off by visiting proxpn.com and using the offer code VOICES. And by MacVoices Magazine, our free Flipboard magazine that brings you some of the best Mac, iPhone, and iPad productivity tips on the web. High in signal, low in noise, just like MacVoices, MacVoices Magazine includes information on how you can get more out of your Apple technology. Subscribe at macvoices.com/magazine or search for MacVoices Magazine on Flipboard. Welcome to the MacJury on MacVoices. This is the Talk of the Mac community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, this is one of our first Weekend With shows because I got, and all of our panelists got, one of the new iPad Pro 9.7-inch devices. So we thought we'd spend a few days playing with them, getting to know them, and then tell you what we thought, or tell each other what we thought, and let you listen in. So with that, let's find out who's here, and we'll just get right to it. First up, as always, it's great to see her, Miss Jean MacDonald. Jean, it's great to have you. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. It's good to see you again and be back on MacVoices. And I got the new toy, so I'm excited to talk about it. But yes, so folks might know me from App Camp for Girls, which is a program we started in 2013. And before that, I used to work at Smile Software, where I was the marketing person for Text Expander and PDFpen.
And didn't I just see something, Jean, that you all started a new location for PDFpen, for App Camp for Girls?
Yes. We just announced that we are going to have a session in Orange County, California, and that's actually being organized by our good friend Daisy Sparks, who, as you know, is the better half of our other friend, David Sparks. And so we're looking forward to that because that'll be our first camp in California, which is a place we've always wanted to have camp. But we also, another new location for us this summer is Phoenix, Arizona, so where I've been assured that everything is air conditioned.
Yeah, that's great. It seems like there's just all these new locations popping up, and it's just growing by leaps and bounds.
Yeah. Well, world domination is the target for us. So.
Good. Now I can set my watch by it because if there's one person that can make it happen, I know where she is. So it's great to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Next up, Mr. Jim Tanous. Jim, you two are in Pennsylvania, so you two are having a bit of a unseasonably cold day here right along with me.
Absolutely. It's heartbreaking. We got a taste of 65-degree weather, and then it got into the 20s and snowed last night. So had to, not so much I had to get the snowblower out, but I had to break out the shovel, which was, like I said, just it's hard to deal with when you're in April and you're still shoveling snow, but that's our lot in life, huh, Chuck?
Yeah, it doesn't quite seem right, but...
Yeah. April is the cruelest month.
Yeah.
I never interpreted it that way, but yes, I guess that's how it works for us. But great to be back as always. I am Jim Tanous. I run Tech Review. That's TEKREVUE. And we cover not just Apple, so a little bit different from your typical guest here on the MacJury and MacVoices. We cover Apple and Windows and gaming and various mobile platforms. So we try to touch a little bit of everything. But we are definitely experienced with Apple. And I also have my new iPad Pro, although it's very similar in looks to my old iPad Air. So excited to talk about some of the changes Apple made there.
Yeah, but it's always good to have you. Always good to have you. Last but absolutely not least, Mr. Michael E. Cohen. Michael, it's great to see you, even if you're not dealing with snow and cold in Pennsylvania.
I know. I have to deal with the horrible, unseemly weather in Santa Monica, California, where it hasn't cracked 65 degrees yet. There are people who are afraid to go outside.
That's a shame. That's a shame. So what do you want to claim as your claim to fame?
Well, I write books for Take Control, and I contribute to Tidbits, and That's pretty much what I do.
Yeah, that's a pretty good set of credentials right there. So,
and occasionally I work with Smile on their stuff too, which is how I met Gene years ago.
That's right.
And I think that's how we all met Gene at some point. But we're all the better for it, no question. All right, so why don't we just start with the basics, which we always have to. Who got up? Well, for Jim and I, it's a little bit different. But who tried to order right as they came online to be available, and what configuration did you get? So, Gene, I'll let you start us off. I'll just move across the panel the way we did the first time.
Yes, I did stay up till midnight. Whatever day that was last week, Thursday night. I'm confused already because it was late and I was tired, but I was determined. I really wanted to get it and get my order in. And I just like to max things out these days. In fact, I hadn't decided. I hadn't really thought through what storage I wanted, but and I didn't even actually know the price. I had only watched the keynote. I didn't know the price of the 256 gigabyte. And I looked at the price and I thought, well, maybe I should just get 128 again, which is what I have on my iPad Air, the first model. And then I looked at the iPad Air to see how much storage was left on it. And I was like, no, I think I'll, I think I should go for 256. So I got that. I got the silver, which is what I've been like. I used to get all black devices, but now I notice like that I would misplace the black devices. They kind of blend in around the house, and the white devices stick out more. So less having to call up Find My Phone to find my phone around the house. And I did get the keyboard, and I got the pencil. And Apple Care. So it was quite a shocking total when all was said and done, but I knew I'd soon forget about that, and I'd always be sorry if I didn't get exactly what I wanted.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Jim, how about you?
I was up that night for the pre-orders, but did not order one, nor did I intend to. I just wanted to see if it would be a frenzy like it typically is with iPhone launches or iPhone pre-orders. And I had not even intended to buy one at all because I'm on a first-gen Air like Gene was, and I don't use my iPad very heavily, so I was really not compelled to go pick one up. But, as surprisingly to me, they didn't sell out right away. It was several days later before many of the models started getting into those longer ship times. And I kept going back and saying, oh, should I? No. And then the launch day came. We don't have an Apple store here in Erie. We have a Best Buy that carries Apple products. And I just checked their website, and they had them in stock, or at least the Wi-Fi models, not the cellular models. And so I said, well, all right. And so I went over and I walked in, and there was no line, no commotion. I just walked over. There was a shelf of them. I picked one up. They probably had about 30 of them, and bought it. They didn't have the accessories though, so I didn't get the cover, the keyboard cover, or the pencil. They were out of both. So I've been working the last few days just with the iPad itself. But that's and I ended up going with the 128 gig Space Gray one. And I went with Space Gray, and I think we've talked about this before, Chuck. For me, it's a consumption device more than a creation device. And so when I'm playing games or watching movies, I find the lighter colors to be more distracting around the bezel. So I prefer the darker, and I usually go with the black / Space Gray Apple products.
Okay, good. Michael?
I didn't stay up. I ordered mine the following morning. I figured if it didn't get there, as soon as possible, it would get there soon enough. I'd intended to buy the larger iPad Pro when I first heard about it because I don't know if you know this about me, Chuck, but I'm like the world's worst cartoonist, but that has never stopped me. And the pencil was just so attractive. I really wanted a drawing device, but I couldn't see myself buying it late last year. I was having a slow period in terms of income. So I figured I'd wait until maybe spring. And then Apple announced the 9.7. I said, oh, terrific. It's just right on time. Plus, it was a reward for me because during my downtime, I wrote a novel. And I said, I'll give myself a reward for writing a novel. And so that's why I bought the 9.7 when it became available. I got it with 128 gig. I got the black bezel, the space gray model, because I watch a lot of movies, and I also like the way when I'm reading a book, the page is framed and there's a black border, and it's also when I'm drawing, I know where I'm running off off the sheet. So, and I just like it. All my other devices are space gray, and I got the pencil. Obviously, I didn't buy the keyboard because I happen to have a Belkin keyboard case for my old iPad Air, and this one has almost the exact same dimensions. It fits into the case just fine. It pairs just fine. The only problem is that the back camera cutout on the case is slightly offset from where the camera is on the Pro. But I figure, you know, a little bit of whittling with a very sharp instrument will probably take care of that.
Well, I got up on the East Coast. You have to get up at 3 a.m. to do this. So I've gotten to the point now that I don't even bother, though, to come out to my office and sit down at the Mac. I just have my iPhone by the bed because that seems to be as good or better than the Apple website as far as actually placing the order. So I set my alarm for 2:56 a.m. and it went off, and so I rubbed the sleep out of my eyes, and I already knew what I was going to get, and so I ordered the Space Gray 256. I was really torn on the pencil, and at the last minute I decided not to get it yet because I am not a cartoonist, Michael. In fact, I'm not an artist of any.
Chuck, I'm not one either. That just hasn't stopped me.
Well, it stopped me because I just didn't. I almost didn't see the point. Now it's really been interesting now, just in the last couple of days, as before we recorded this, I'm starting to see more apps come out and talk about how they're implementing support for the pencil. So at some point I may have to crack and get that. I got the 256 mainly because of the 4K video on here. Because if you're going to shoot any 4K video with this iPad, which I've done some video with my old iPad Air 2, and it's great. I mean, it's a super viewfinder, obviously, but that starts to suck up a lot of space. So if you've got a 4K video, you're going to take up a lot more. So, Gene, just like you, I knew I'd regret it. You never regret buying too much storage, I don't think. But you can really regret not having enough. So I went with that. The keyboard I did not go for a couple reasons, not the least of which, and you probably can't see it real well, but this is the Zero Chroma case for the iPad Air 2. The new iPad Pro fits it just great. The camera offset is just about right. If you just wiggle the iPad around in it a little bit, it fits. It does not, unfortunately, it does not have the extra holes for the 4 speakers, and we'll talk about that in a little while. So I may have to do a little whittling too, Michael, or something like that if I'm going to keep this. But I have a keyboard cover for this case, and I thought, well, for those few occasions right now until something comes out from third parties, I figured I'd go that way. So I've been very happy with this case so far. So yeah, it's interesting that, Gene, you were the only one that went with the white bezel, I guess. And you've explained why, and I'm like these other gentlemen. I've been just a touch surprised that Apple hasn't offered at least one other color with the black bezel. It's always only the space gray.
Ooh, flower power would be nice.
Wow, there's a blast from the past.
From the past.
Yeah, yeah. Wow.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it does seem funny, like that, because I like the black bezel for sure, but like I said, with the phone, I started finding like, maybe my next phone I'll get silver, and I did, and I liked that. That was fine. And then I happened to get an iPad mini last fall for very, very thin rationalization. I left my iPad Air at a conference in the beginning of October, and conference organizer, this was at Coco Love. I was in Philadelphia, so I was in your neck of the woods. He could pick it up. It was just locked up at the venue. And he was going to bring it to me at another conference, Release Notes, at the end of October. And I thought, I don't really need my iPad for 3 weeks. And then I was like, no, I need my iPad. So I decided to buy a mini for the heck of it. And, I'd always been kind of curious. And so I got a silver mini, and I like that. And it's kind of now, it's just like, well, now the space gray would stick out in my collection. And I know that seems, but I like it. I've gotten used to the white bezel. It really doesn't bother me. And I like the silver. And I guess it was just a change. I'm not a fan of gold or rose gold as a color anyway. So I wouldn't have gotten those. I was going to say, so I'm the only one that got the keyboard, sounds like. Well, I really was interested in trying the iPad Pro as a replacement for the Mac. I've been listening to the podcast called Canvas by Federico Viticci and Fraser Spears. And Federico, as I think most people know, just only uses an iPad, and he's been doing that since before the Pro. So I was very close to getting the iPad Pro, the original version, last fall, but I had just kept procrastinating, waiting to see how the end of the year went and whether I could, afford it. It's an expensive device, but I was really close to buying it. And then I thought, well, I'll wait and see what happens at this announcement. And then with the smaller size, I thought that definitely, I want to give that a try, because as much as I like the idea of the big Surface, I don't like the idea of carrying it around. So, but the typing on the keyboard is really good. I had tried out somebody's with the big iPad Pro, and even though it's smaller keyboard, it's fine for me. And I just had this moment of total thrill when I thought, I wonder if Command Tab works on this, and it does. And so switching between apps is a keyboard operation now, instead of double clicking on, this doesn't have force touch, but, double clicking on the home button. So I'm excited to have it. The only thing I don't love about it, and I don't love about Apple's accessories these days, is I liked my smart case for the iPad Air. That was a great accessory. I like a back and a front, and something that is not magnetically attached. And I forgot how this keyboard is still magnetically attached, and you could easily, it will detach if you put too much pressure between the keyboard and the iPad, say, picking it up. So I almost dropped it once. And it's a little fiddly, in terms of setting it up. Somebody, I forget who wrote this, said it's like a bad origami. It's not, it's not 100% clear. It's fairly, intuitive if what you want to do is type. But if you want to fold it back to be a stand, you definitely have to play around with it before it becomes clear how that works. So
it would be really great if there were a small on-screen video on the iPad to actually demonstrate how to fold it.
Yeah, I agree.
Because it is a video device. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm curious, Gene, you already answered the question, but Michael, Jim, do either one of you have an iPad Pro? And I'm going to start referring it to as the iPad Pro 12 so we can keep them differentiated. Jim, you do, right?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I was nodding to agree with your designation, but no, I never bought the iPad Pro 12. So I've used it in the stores, and I had a colleague who had one. I played with it for a half hour one afternoon, but don't own one. Haven't had much experience with it in a personal setting.
Okay, Michael?
I don't have the iPad Pro Big, the big brother, the big sister, or the Hulk.
Yeah.
I actually do have one.
Oh, Gene, I thought you said you didn't.
I didn't buy one, but I know it's I can cover up my whole. But one of our very generous App Camp for Girls supporters wrote to me a week ago and said, I have an iPad Pro, and it was given to me as a gift, and I don't want it. Would you want to use it for camp? And I'm like, totally. And then I was excited, to have a try with it. But yeah, for the girls, I think it's going to really be a big draw, no pun intended, but for the drawing that they do, they might really enjoy using the iPad Pro and the pencil. But so I got this weekend, I just switched off between the two. It just feels really big. I could see where you might get used to it. And I also don't have the accessories for it. I don't have the cover or the stand. So I've been mostly holding it or propping it up, on my knees, if I'm sitting in bed. And it just feels whoa, it's big. So I don't know. I think I'm going to keep switching back and forth just to make sure I feel like I made the right choice. But I don't know. Do you have one, Chuck? Did you get it?
Yeah, I have the iPad Pro actually sitting right there. The iPad Pro 12, excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been interesting to compare the two devices, because I think up till this point, all of us have kind of equated bigger screens with more productivity, right up to the point that the new MacBook came out, and then people were going the other direction. The screen is gorgeous. I mean, the screen's gorgeous on both of them. It is a little bulky to carry around. I find that if I'm sitting here in the office, and have it set up, I absolutely love it, and I prefer that. But if I'm going to, a coffee shop or something, or want to be mobile or get on a plane, which I'll do shortly here for NAB, I think that it's going to be the 9.7 that goes, because that just feels a little big and bulky to use in those scenarios. Not that you can't, and not that you can't be, I think, maybe just a touch more productive because of the extra real estate. But at the same time, I'm starting to view the 9.7 as something akin to the MacBook, which I don't have, but I have a small old Air, which is good for some situations, but I still prefer my MacBook Pro, 90% of the time. So I think it just sort of depends on what you like to do with it. And I'm now I'm kind of excited to see what happens as the app developers come out and implement the pencil tech for things more than just drawing and menu selection. I'm not smart enough to know what it's going to be, but I'm anxious to see just what they can do. Because I was in a Best Buy last night, and there hung 2 Apple Pencils, and it's like, should I? Not yet. Not yet.
Yeah, I'm going to convince you want one. Like by tomorrow, you'll buy one.
Okay.
I predict by the end of this show, you will have decided to buy one.
Well, it's not like you're going to have to push too hard, Gene, but
Oh, I know. I'm surprised you've resisted this long. But I think it's because you do associate it with artistry, and it certainly is a great tool for artists. But one of the things that I think a lot of people, in our generation will appreciate about it is that it makes handwriting meaningful again, because you can write stuff with it. Like you can literally.
Absolutely true. I've gone through a number of different styli on various iPads over the years, and they've never felt really good about my handwriting. It always felt funny because of the round, squishy capacitance tip that they tended to have. Just didn't feel right. But I tried a little handwriting with the pencil, and it felt right. It just felt right. It felt like I was writing on glass, of course, because I'm writing on glass, but my handwriting looked exactly as though I were writing on a sheet of paper, which none of the other styli, or whatever you want to pronounce it, none of them have ever done that for me before. So
neither one of you have clearly seen my handwriting, so that's not.
My handwriting has baffled cryptologists.
Yeah, well, Jim, you said that you use the iPad mainly as a consumption device. Is this going to be primarily a consumption device, or do you plan to try to push it a little more into the productivity realm?
Well, I do plan to try, but as we'll go into more, I'm sure later on, having a couple days only with this, so keep that in mind. I haven't really put it through its paces. Apple hasn't done enough in terms of iOS yet to make it very efficient for what I need to do. I can get most of what I need done. The question is, I can do it 10 times faster on a Mac or a PC. And Gene, you mentioned Federico, and it is interesting. He's for a long time, he's advocated the benefits of an iPad, and he's gone into detail about how he uses it for his MacStories.net website and his personal work and his podcasts. But at the same time, he's putting in a lot of effort ahead of time to make that work for his workflow. Like if people who know of his website recall, he reviewed the iOS app editorial maybe a year or two ago, and it's a very powerful scripting platform. And he came out and as he was teasing that he was going to be releasing this very long review, he said, look at what you can do. People can use this, and it works just like a Mac. You can get anything you can do on a Mac, you can get it done on an iPad. And then he released this 5,000-word review, encyclopedic review, and it was incredibly complicated. And you can definitely, if you're technically savvy and you're willing to put the effort in, you can do it. 99% of people are not going to want to take that that initial step. And so from my perspective, as someone who prefers a mouse and a keyboard and also likes to truly multitask, not just side by side, but have multiple things open at once and have access to a file system, iOS is not there yet. And so I don't know, even with all the extra power available in this 9.7-inch iPad Pro, if it's truly going to change the way I use it going, in the long term versus an iPad Air that I was using previously.
Michael, how about you? I don't know what your primary use is for an iPad. So how do you see this device fitting into your workflow?
For me, it's about a 70 to 75% consumption device. I read a lot of books on my iPad. Let us not talk about the disaster that's the current version of iBooks, shall we? But I do read a lot of books, and I also watch a lot of video on it as well. But I have used it in the past. I've written articles and essays on my older iPad Air with my little keyboard case, and I can see myself continuing to do that. When I'm reviewing editorial changes in a book that I'm working on, I often review the PDF on the iPad because it's just easier to kind of sit anywhere and work on it. I don't have a laptop Mac. I have an iMac. So since PDF Pro works so well on the iPad, I use it for that as well. I also, play around with video editing and stuff with iMovie and stuff like that. But it's mostly a consumption device, I guess, for the most part. That and drawing.
Okay, I'm curious. I have to say that the newer versions of iOS that have supported some of their version of multitasking, they've changed my way of using my iPad a little bit, because up to this point, Jim, I think you can hit it on the head. I think a lot of it depends on the kind of work you do. I invariably have 7, 8, 9, 10 apps open, and I'm bouncing back and forth between them on the Mac. And I don't find the bouncing quite as easy on the iPad. Now, Gene may have just given me a hint with the with the application switching. So maybe because I did not know about that.
And that works. Just to make sure the readers or listeners are clear, that's not exclusive to the Apple Smart Keyboard. That works on any
right.
Bluetooth keyboard. So you don't have to have anything special with that. You can, because I've been using mine with my Magic Keyboard via Bluetooth, and it's great. That really does enhance the ability to get things done between multiple applications, just quickly command tabbing like we're used to on the Mac.
Yeah, the ability to split screen and all, I think and that's why it has been such a big deal on the iPad Pro 12 for me. And I'm now I've got to get used to doing it on the 9, and that's, again, it's not quite as much stuff open, but it's there. And also, I don't seem to be capable of doing one thing at once anymore. I need to have at least a video or something going in the background. So that's the picture-in-picture has been a great boon. It's a little bit smaller, obviously, on the 9, but I'm still just finding this just a really sweet machine that I think I'm going to be happy selling my iPad Air 2 and moving to full time.
One of the biggest problems I've had actually is remembering that it has split view and the 2-up screen and like that, because I go way back to the original iPad, and so I'm used to switching between apps the old-fashioned way. So I see a mail message coming in, I have to stop and think, wait a minute, I don't have to leave what I'm doing to slide the mail over and see it and then be back where I was before. So it's going to take a little bit of time for me to learn that that's around, since on the old iPad Air, you had very limited support for multitasking with its processor, whereas this one does everything.
One other thing, I was dying to get my hands on this machine to see what kind of a difference it made, and that was the audio, because that was one of the biggest differences on the iPad Pro 12. That all of a sudden, number one, you had stereo separation because the thing was big, especially if you had it right in front of you. But the audio was so much better. The experience was so much better. And I'm going to reserve my comments about the new one. And Gene, how about you? What have you noticed about the audio on the new Air, or on the on the new 9.7?
Well, yeah, I had seen some reviewers comment on it, so that made me pretty psyched to get it as well. Because I travel a lot, I usually bring some small speaker with me, and that isn't great quality, but it's good for a hotel room or something. And I thought, boy, if the quality was good, and it's just excellent. I'm no audiophile expert, but I been listening to. I played a Pandora station that had a lot of acoustic guitar in it that just sounded so perfect. It really was really good, and you could get quite a bit of volume out of it. So I like that. I haven't really played with the bigger one as much on the sound, so I can't really compare them. But I think the stereo separation is still pretty good, even with the 9.7.
It is. It is.
Michael, but Michael, I'll let you jump in.
Yes, my old iPad Air, the original iPad Air, had a very, very weak speaker, and in fact, there's something slightly wrong with the case, so it sometimes buzzes with harmonics occasionally if there's bass, and it's just not a terrific experience. I often listen to it with headphones. But the little big man iPad Pro is just, the sound is astonishingly good for a device that small and that thin. In horizontal orientation, in landscape orientation, if you're watching a movie, the stereo separation is astonishing. It has a very good bottom for a machine that's that small and does the high end really well. I was truly astonished at how much louder and richer and more accurate the sound was compared to the old iPad Air. Yeah, I'm very satisfied.
Jim, especially you, because you're a gamer and a consumption guy.
Yeah, so I'm wondering now if I have a flaw in mine. It's definitely better than the first-gen iPad Air, definitely better than from what I've had experience with the iPad Air 2, which I would expect it to be. And it is richer, and the 4 speakers helps. And so it sounds very good for a tablet. I want to caution people coming into this, having not used one, that it's not some earth-shattering experience that's going to replace even a modestly priced desktop speaker system or portable, even a portable speaker system. Some of those Bluetooth speakers that have the better speaker size. But the thing I've noticed is that it's the bass. I don't know if it's a tuning problem or a case problem, or like I said, maybe there's a flaw with mine. Anytime the volume gets loud, like maxing out the volume, or there's bass heavy sound, the thing rattles, and you feel both the vibration and you hear the distortion. And it's not like it's a blown speaker; it's a distortion, like it's kind of buzzing the case, like the metal is coming into contact with the driver, and so that can be annoying.
That's the problem I had with my old Air, so it may in fact be a manufacturing flaw.
Yeah, because my Air is okay. It doesn't do that, but it is quiet, and doesn't hit the lows. But like I was comparing it to, I have a Nexus 6P, which is an Android. It's Google's own smartphone built by Huawei, and it has 2 speakers on the front that face you. So they're on the face of the top and the bottom. So if you hold it in landscape mode, it's on left and right. And that sounds to me, it doesn't hit the bass, but again, if the bass is rattling on my iPad Pro 9, then it's kind of a loss there. But it does have, for me, that smaller Android phone has a richer, more balanced sound compared to the iPad Pro 9. So definitely an improvement, no question. But I'm not as enthusiastic about what it's producing on a more neutral analysis versus a comparative analysis that some people are.
Jim, you may have a defective one or something, because I'm kind of with Gene and Michael. Although I do absolutely agree with your comment that it's not going to replace a desktop speaker, at least not for me, for music. I mean, for listening for podcasts or audio of a movie that doesn't depend on its soundtrack, it's more than good. If I were going to sit down and listen to music, I'd probably pull out the Bluetooth speaker. That said, though, I think the experience is probably about 90% of the iPad Pro, iPad Pro 12. Sorry, got to figure that naming convention thing out. The 12 is just, I mean, it's fantastic. The 9 is very, very, very good. But I am a little surprised because I've not experienced any of the buzzing, and I tend to play loud music that has a lot of, that would be prone to that kind of thing. So that's really interesting.
I'll have to look into that. I'll take it back to the store in a few days and see if I can compare to one of the floor models and see if maybe that's all it is manufacturing defect.
Yeah, and I'm going to now really be anxious to go and try mine specifically to see if I can duplicate that effect. But
one thing I found interesting just playing around with it, I was listening to it in landscape orientation. You get that really wide separation. And while it was playing, I said, well, what happens if I flip it to portrait? And when I did, the speaker orientation shifted as well. So although I had a narrower field, I still had stereo. So it was smart enough to know to switch in the middle of something as I flipped it. I thought that was very cool.
Yeah. And I guess I can't stress enough just the addition of those extra speakers. Just like with the 12, when I put it down beside my Air 2 and play identical things on it, the experience is light years different. And folks, if that sounds like I'm really a spoiled brat, no, I'm not. It's just that, if this is going to be one of my primary devices for consumption, it needs to be something that I don't go and say, well, I'm going to put off watching that movie or watching that video until I can get to my Mac or till I can get to my big screen TV or whatever. And now I feel like I would not hesitate to watch or listen to anything on this in favor of something else if the convenience is the same. So that's just the way I've come at it. This edition of MacVoices is sponsored by ProXPN, the virtual private network service. Protect your internet by securing your connection, and get up to 50% off by visiting proxpn.com and using the offer code VOICES. ProXPN is a simple, effective way to secure your internet connection on your Mac or iOS device when you're away from home. Why do you care about a secure connection? Because you might decide to buy something from Amazon while you're at the coffee shop. Or you might want to order your prescriptions while you're in the mountains for the weekend. Or you might need to place an online order for all the things you forgot to bring with you on vacation in the Cayman Islands. With ProXPN, you can be sure that any and all of these transactions are secure and safe from the bad guys who are hoping to pay for their next vacation with your credit card. But ProXPN does more than that. By using ProXPN, you can appear to be sitting anywhere in the world, no matter where you happen to be actually sitting in the world. So you can be in London, but look like you're in New York. Or be in New York and look like you're in Hong Kong. Why does that matter? Because some services limit what you can see based on where it looks like you're coming from. This way, you can access any of those services and protect yourself from any government surveillance or people trying to capture your credit cards, passwords, and anything else you might happen to reveal when you're online. With ProXPN's 2048-bit encryption key and a 512-bit encryption tunnel, and their location choices, no one but you will know what you're doing and where you are when you're online. Except, of course, you. Visit proxpn.com and try it for free to see just how easy it is and how secure you feel. Then sign up with the code VOICES to get a year of their premium service for 50% off. Maybe a year is a little long to commit, though. Use the offer code VOICES to get 33% off a 6-month subscription. Still too long a commitment? I understand. I'm not big on commitment either. Use the offer code VOICES to get 20% off a 3-month subscription, all 3 for as long as you are a subscriber to ProXPN. No matter how long you sign up for, give ProXPN a try. And the next time you see something about security breaches or privacy violations in the news, you'll know that you don't have to worry. Protect your internet by securing your connection with ProXPN at proxpn.com. Thanks to ProXPN for their support of MacVoices. Any big surprises here, folks, with this device? I mean, it's an iPad. It doesn't strike me as hugely faster, at least not so far. I have only started messing a little bit with the editing tools. Has anybody played anything at any degree with the camera?
Just basic, tiny bit.
Okay. And any impressions? I mean, are we all?
It takes really good pictures from the back camera. I will tell you that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we're kind of spoiled at this point by our iPhones and all that they've already got the camera that's now in this.
Yeah, it's a huge improvement if you're coming from an older iPad and you're used to using the iPad as your camera or video camera, but no noticeable difference or no serious improvement that I could tell over an iPhone 6s, for example. And if you're going to be shooting video, for me, the form factor of the phone is probably the preferred the preferred method. But as you said, Chuck, the iPad is unique in many, like in filmmaking or with interviews, because it does give you that really great size to look at for composing your shot. So it's just not as convenient to kind of hold that bigger device up in front of you.
Yeah. Well, and for editing too.
Well, yes, of course, yeah.
Gene, how about you on the imagery side? Is that something that you plan on using a lot, or is it just going to be there and you'll use it when convenient?
I do think I've been playing with coloring books and just to play with the pencil, and that's been really cool. I have to say, I can see where people would get, addicted to coloring and drawing. I played with Paper, that drawing app that everybody loves. I never really loved it that much, but I never really had a good stylus before, so I'm excited about this. And I did do a little portrait of one of my guinea pigs, and that was a lot of fun. And it does. But one of the things I think, getting back to the camera and as image editing software, I think will be pretty cool. This would be another good reason to get the pencil for doing tweaks on images. I've played a bit with what's the name of there's the app that you basically take it makes your photo black and white, and then you bring the color out in little bits. So it's like nice for, what is the name of that app? It's an old one, oldie but a goodie.
There are several of them, Gene. I'm not sure which one you're using.
It was, that's funny, I don't see it right now, but, for something like that, or for Pixelmator, I've been playing with Pixelmator, editing and, touching up or using effects. It's making masks on photos. It's been pretty cool to have the combination of the pencil and the iPad Pro, because it's more than just a capacitive tip. There's pressure sensitivity, right. So, and it's funny because I find myself naturally, as I'm drawing, I just instinctively I keep turning the pencil around, like rotating it in my hand. I'll draw a little bit and I'll rotate it a bit because it feels so much like a real pencil that I'm like searching for I've worn down one side of it and now I'm like turning it. I'm thinking, no, that doesn't need to, I don't need to do that. But I realize it's such a habit now to just keep sort of rotating the pencil slightly so that you wear down the lead or the color evenly.
One thing I was interested in seeing with the pencil, I ran it down till it only had 70% charge, and then I plugged it into the bottom of the iPad Pro just to see how fast it would take to recharge. And for the first time, I could actually watch the battery gauge in real time jump up. It only took a few minutes to go from 70 to 100%. It charges real darn fast.
But yeah, I've been not having a pencil yet. I really haven't had that experience. How long is the charge lasting for these devices? Is there any difference on the 9.7? Well, I guess unless you had a 12, you wouldn't know. But
I compare it to my old iPad Air, and it gets about the same battery drain as it did with the old Air. It runs down at about the same rate, and it recharges at about the same rate, the iPad itself, which is roughly 20% per hour is what I've been seeing, 18 to 20% per hour when it's plugged in.
Okay, so you can get what? That means 5 hours out of a charge?
No, you get 10 hours out of a charge, but when you plug in, it only takes 5 hours to go from 0 all the way up to 100.
Oh, okay.
So it charges twice as fast as it discharges, and it discharges if you're really putting a load on it, you get about 8 to 10 hours out of it.
Well, one thing about the pencil I will say is the pairing. Since you just plug it into the pad, it makes it. I don't know. It's sort of a no-brainer. You plug it in. It says pair this. You say yes, and that's it. You don't have to go to any control panel. And if you have two iPads like you have, Chuck, you still only need one pencil, obviously, but you can switch between the two of them, and it just asks to pair, and it does it automatically. So it's not like a big deal at all. It's pretty, I mean, it feels very space age plugging it into the iPad itself. So
this is all part of Jean's nefarious plan to get me to buy an iPad or a pencil by the end of the show. Because now she's saying, well, you can use it on both. So basically, it's a 50% discount on the pencil. That's the way my head works. Jim, you were the only one that said that you only got the Wi-Fi model. Jean, Michael, did you get one of the cellular models, or did you just go Wi-Fi?
I got the Wi-Fi model because I don't go anywhere.
We're sorry.
I'm right there with you, Michael. Don't feel bad. We're much safer here in the house.
When I do go somewhere, I usually go somewhere that has Wi-Fi anyway. And if it doesn't, I usually have my iPhone in my pocket, which will act as a hotspot. So,
Jean,
I don't really need it.
I got Wi-Fi. I got cellular. I've always gotten cellular, except for that first iPad when it came out and they didn't have any cellular versions on the original iPad launch. But I just like having the ability to go online, and I also think, sort of down the line, if I decide I want to sell it, I feel like it's something that might make a difference to somebody who wanted to buy it. I don't know. It's probably it's not my most frugal rationalization, but again, like anything else, it's like I don't want to find out that I really want it when I don't have it. So, and I suppose using the hotspot works, but I mean, it just without, I don't know. What can I say? They've got me on this. And also the thing about, so I don't totally understand this, and maybe Chuck, you have done more research, but it has two SIMs in it, and one is built in and one can be replaced, and you can go on cellular networks when you're abroad, like very easily. And I'm looking forward to that. And I can't really do that with my phone that easily. So.
Yeah, I have not, Jean, because I went with the Wi-Fi model. This is my first iPad, my second iPad, because the iPad Pro 12, I got Wi-Fi only. A little bit of a rant here from me. I realized that AT&T is charging me like $10 a month to keep my iPad on my plan, not a separate plan, just for the privilege of using their service. And when I realized this, I got just a little ticked about it, because there are going to be so few situations where I either don't have Wi-Fi or don't have my iPhone with me to act as a hotspot, and I'm already paying AT&T for the data. So I just decided I'm not going to get the cellular this time. I'm going to go with Wi-Fi, use my iPhone as the hotspot, and see if I do miss it or if it becomes an issue for me. So that's one of those that down the road I'll have to let you know, because so far I haven't run into a situation where that didn't work just fine. But I feel like it's one of those things that AT&T, $120 a year, for me just to have the privilege of connecting to your. No, sorry.
Well, Verizon did the same thing, and I was, using it to share the data. I thought like, well, I want to do that, but so that was a few years ago, and then. When I got the iPad mini, I decided, I got like some $10 plan on T-Mobile that when I was looking at the plans that were available, and I was somewhere where I wanted to use it. And so I did that. And ever since then, T-Mobile, they have like 200 megabytes free per month, no matter what. Free. So pretty much I'm never going to use a plan that renews automatically on the iPad again, for sure, because that I can see it is not, what I need it for. I just need it once in a while. I want to be able to use data directly on the pad, and I can just do that on a one-off basis with all of the plans that are available right through the pad. So, yeah, I agree. I'm annoyed that I let it go on so long with the Verizon as well, because it should have clicked, like you said, like, wait a second, what am I paying for? Because, it's only $15 to have like 2 more gigabytes, so why would I, or, for wherever you are on your plan, I try to do as little as possible and see how that goes. So,
yeah. Well, and to spin it another way, Gene, maybe I'm justifying things for myself, but I'm the number of times I'm going to have my iPad with me that I don't have my pack with me, it's going to be minimal. And in my pack, I always have a Karma hotspot. And so if I don't want to chew up the AT&T, and I've bought plenty of data from Karma, so it's just sitting waiting for me. So if I really have, like, say, have a protracted session or whatever that I want, I can pull that out and use it. So I just,
that's interesting.
It's a little less convenient, definitely, and it's one more thing I have to take with me. But on the other hand, it lives in the backpack anyway, so what difference does it make? But yeah, I give AT&T credit for their kind of watch this hand because this hand is in your pocket. But now that I figured it out, no more.
Yeah, the old misdirection play. Look over there.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, what else, guys? I gather I'm the only one here that's interested in the 4K video capability. Is anybody else excited about that, or?
I am excited, but only theoretically right now because I don't have any project in hand where I would make much use of it. But my degree is in motion picture television production, and I've always been kind of in that world off and on. So I am really interested in the capability. I just don't have any reason to use it right now, but I'm glad I have it. And video does look really good on the device.
Oh, yeah.
Astonishingly good.
Yeah.
So, Chuck, if you are making video with your iPad, what kind of mount do you have for your tripod, or how are you doing that?
I've got 2 mounts. I've got the iOgrapher and also the Padcaster. And this because the form factor is so similar to the Air 2 that this will fit both of them. And those two, they're, as far as I'm concerned, they're 2 separate devices. They do the same thing. They hold your iPad in a frame that then allows you to attach, say, microphones, lights, attach your iPad to a tripod. The Padcaster is a bit more of an industrial thing. It's going to hold up a lot longer. The iOgrapher is built a little bit more for hands-on because it's got handles on the side. And I'll try to drop something in here so that you can do one of these a lot easier. But the Padcaster, again, is something that if you were going to be out on location and we're going to be carrying it around, that's probably the way you would want to go. So they're both great products, and I love them both. But yeah, that's what I've been using for that particular thing. And I'm playing with a lot of the different video software out there, and the editing. iMovie obviously is one, but there's some other things out there that are a little more powerful that I haven't quite settled on one. And I'm sliding in. Who was mentioning Federico earlier? Was that you?
I was.
Okay. I have this theory that we have so much ingrained knowledge already about how to do things on the Mac that we just say, oh, it's faster to do it over there. And so I haven't pushed myself to the iPad necessarily. But I'm trying to get to that point where I'm really comfortable working on the iPad, not because it sounds like I'm going against my preaching of not trying to replace this with one device with another. I just want to have the same capabilities on both devices. But I've got so many hours of editing on the Mac that I already know how to do everything there.
Yeah.
And I have to look it up or find out how to do it on the iPad. So that's a work in progress for me.
I think one thing that helps with that is go somewhere without your Mac to do something for an extended period of time and see how far you can get. And that may, help get you ingrained into how the software and hardware works together much more, because you won't be thinking about, I'm going to go to my Mac, since you can't.
Yeah, that's a fair point. But I don't know how I go anywhere without my Mac. That doesn't. That's like leaving your house without your pants. It just not going to happen.
Well, Well, it doesn't happen much.
Wait, I thought you said you didn't go anywhere,
I think
Michael.
too, it's
Well, this
it's
is why I
important.
don't go anywhere.
Yeah.
I think too, it's important. A lot. Phil Schiller did it himself, and then obviously all the early reviewers took that tone, and now a lot of customers are doing it. Is this a laptop replacement? And it's important, I think, not to think of it that way, because while this device may replace that device, meaning you have one or the other, it's not necessarily meant to replace that device in terms of functionality. iOS is about a new way of doing things. You're doing things on iOS you never did before on a computer. And even though as iOS gets more powerful, people expect more of it. It's never really going to replace a mouse and keyboard in a computer for some people. As Steve Jobs said, there's always going to be trucks. It's always going to be that heavy use case. But if you think about, instead of making an analog for every single task you do, just finding out what its capabilities are and trying to morph into that and find new ways to do things, either new things that you're doing or find a new way to do something you used to do. That's, I think, more the appropriate analysis, because it's just not, there is no one-to-one for so many of the features there. And this is why I think some of the two-in-one stuff on the Windows side, where it's a touch screen, tablet, and a computer, even though I like the Surface, some of these like two-in-one laptops, they're not blowing up the market because they're trying to blend together two types of tasks that don't necessarily need to be compared. And so that's how I'm viewing it. I'm not viewing this as a laptop replacement. I'm viewing it as an iPad. It's something new, and it does certain things very well, and I don't expect it to do other things well or at all.
And why is that? I mean, why do we do that, Jim? And
that's human nature. I mean, we like to compare things. We think, we always want the next thing to be better, to do everything the thing that did it before did is do and do something more. I think that's natural. But like I said, I think about how computing was done. I mean, I was in the corporate world when the first iPhone was released. We had Palm Pilots, and then I think at one point I had a Windows CE device. So the very, very early precursor to Windows Mobile that still had a stylus and a start menu. And I was looking at that, and those were very compromised devices in many ways. And then the iPhone comes out, and it changes the way you think about how you're doing things on mobile. And so now I'm navigating through emails, and I'm FaceTiming, and I'm doing things I never would have thought to do before. And I don't know I'm not a psychologist. I don't know what theory is taking place when humans try to make that connection and assume that everything that comes before it's like a reverse pyramid. It must include what it had and then expand. I just view it as a separate category. It's not in the Venn diagram between the two. They're not overlapping. They're separate. And just because they do a few things in common doesn't mean that they're the same device.
Gene, you said, I think you got the keyboard cover. Were you the one? Yeah, I got that right. Okay.
Yeah.
What all, Jim, Michael, what are you guys using for covers at this point? Anything? Do you have aspirations to get anything in particular? Or are you just sort of waiting to see what the market delivers?
Well, I in my case, I happen to have the old Belkin that worked with my iPad Air, which works fine for this if I need to walk around with a keyboard cover. And I also have another cover that looks it looks like a 19th century book, with the binding and everything else that the iPad fits in as well. And if I just want to feel, old-fashioned, I'll go out with that. But when I'm around the house, I don't really need a cover. So I'm often going commando with it. I'm just fine with that.
Yeah, I didn't pick up a cover because they didn't have the smart cover. And as having a first-gen Air as opposed to the second-gen Air, a lot of the form-fitting covers don't fit, unfortunately, because I think Apple made the switch on the second where the lock switch is gone and the volume buttons move up. But on the first-gen Air, it still has the switch and the buttons are lower. And so even if you don't care about the smart connector port or the speakers being blocked, any type of form-fitting, very tightly fitting case that's meant for the first-gen Air is not going to work for you on the iPad Pro 9 because it'll push those volume buttons in, and not only will we not have access to them, but the screen will constantly be showing the volume going up and down, which is fun. So I didn't get a case. I've been using it without a case for the last 2.5 days or whatever it's been. But I went on Apple's website and I said, okay, Best Buy didn't have the case. Let me start getting some accessories. And holy smokes, I guess I knew the pricing, but I wasn't ever buying it for myself.
Yeah.
I just did some numbers here. You want the smart keyboard for the 9.7-inch iPad
Yeah, I
Pro.
was
It's
gonna bring that.
$150. But that's, as Gene said, that only covers the front. You want to cover the back? That's the silicone case. That's $70. It's right there, like $220. And if you really want the pencil, that's another $100. So $320 plus tax on top of your iPad, just to kind of get the full experience. And that was, so I don't know what I'm going to do. I need to get a case. I think these devices are fragile in many respects, so I want to protect it. But man, that's some sticker shock after you've dropped at least $599 on an iPad to turn around and have to spend $200 or $300 more just to protect it and use it as Apple advertises.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gene, you were talking. You were going to say.
Yeah, I'm annoyed with Apple with the expense of the accessories, because that original iPad Air smart case, which I love, but it was $70, and I thought that was pretty darn pricey. Then when I got the Mini, I thought, well, I'm just going to pony up for another smart case because I really like the smart case. But they don't make that anymore. I don't know if they ever made it for the Mini. And you would get an Apple silicone back and an Apple smart cover, and those two things together are $100, just for the Mini. So I did not buy that because I was like, that's ridiculous. I was basically prepared to spend $70 and be like, oh, whatever, I'm just going to do it and suck up and hold my nose and buy it, but not for $100. And I asked around on Twitter, and actually Bradley Chambers said, yeah, I had that same issue when I bought one for my wife, and I found this smart case on Amazon for $12. I mean, not a smart case, actual smart case, but yeah, I got for the Mini this two-piece. It's one piece, back and front for $12, and it's not quite Apple quality, but it's $12, and it's really, I mean, this is it. It's it works. It's just like the folds of the smart cover are not quite as elegantly engineered, where I don't know, they're a little stiffer or something, but it works perfectly fine. And for, again, $12, not $100. So I've been looking around online for a back for the iPad Pro that I got. And I will continue to look around online because, yes, that $70 piece. And I don't even, the problem with the keyboard case, the keyboard cover is that it only comes in one color, which is, like black space, kind of gray. So, if I get a gray thing to match it on the back, then basically I could have gotten a space gray. I might as well have gotten a space gray case. So I don't know. I'm definitely feeling like Apple has just gone a little bit insane with their accessory, design and the prices thereof. It seems, it seems ridiculous at this point. So.
Yeah, I'm going to make a recommendation for something I don't have in hand yet, which is strange. But this is the iPad Pro 12, and this is a case. And I'm afraid I'm not even going to try to pronounce it because I will get it wrong. So I'll put up a graphic here over this. But this is an inexpensive case. It's like $15-16, I believe, on Amazon. It's not the greatest case in the world, but it's a decent case. It provides decent protection. I'm hoping that you can see it here, because it holds so well that sometimes it's a little hard to open. But if you look here on the edges, you can see how it holds the iPad in place with these little grips. It protects all of the corners, and it obviously it sits at various angles. It has, what'd you say, Michael? An origami project? Sometimes it feels like that, but it's got the
that's
gripper.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so I've looked at this case, and it's still on my iPad Pro. I've looked at this 12. I've looked at this case as sort of a stopgap measure until a lot of the major designers come out and they have something really, really good. But on the other hand, I've seen a couple come out for the 12, and I haven't been inclined to change it yet because I just don't. I hate to keep pouring money into cases. So, and this is available now. because of the way the little grip things are, it does not block any of the 4 speakers, and so therefore I'm pretty confident it's not going to block them on the 9.7. It should get here tomorrow, so I was kind of hoping I could get it before the show, but I want to get the show out first. So I'll have a link in the show notes to it to go and check it out. It comes in a lot of colors, and again, it might not be the case you end up with, but it may be good enough just to protect it. Might go around the house, or until you find one that you really, really love.
Exactly.
So, yeah, cases are an interesting. People pass over cases, but cases I think are really important. So, guys, I think it's about time to wrap it up. Anything that you were disappointed in the 9.7 with? Anything that struck you as, gee, I thought it would be, and it wasn't?
There's one thing that I'm really impressed with we haven't touched on, and that's the True Tone display.
Oh, okay. Touch on it.
It has ambient light sensors in the front of it, so it tries to color correct your screen depending on the current lighting conditions. And I've tried it out by wandering around the apartment, to rooms that had different lighting and like that, and watch the screen change its color cast slightly to match. And I thought, that's very nice. You don't have to have it. It's easy to turn off, but it's just a very cool extra feature that doesn't exist on the iPad Pro Big.
That's right.
Yeah, it's a very subtle effect, but you notice you don't notice when unless you were looking for it to happen, Michael. Yeah. But if you're not looking for it, you won't notice it, and then you go to turn it off, and suddenly, wow, that's either a lot bluer or a lot cooler or warmer, depending on what the environment you were in prior was. And it's great for comfort. I've noticed I have to do some color accurate stuff on occasion, and it does mess with that. So if you're doing anything color dependent, turn that off. But as you said, it's very easy. It's a quick trip to settings to turn it on and off when you need it.
And I also think that it also the fact that Jeff Carlson touched on this briefly, that it does have actual color management inside iOS now, which means that you're going to start seeing photo apps that let you do quite a bit more with color correction than you could before, because it now has standard APIs built in.
Did anybody feel that their iPads were keeping them up at night because of the blue light thing?
No, it's because I was reading a book that I couldn't put down.
Yeah. I think any light is going to be keeping you up. We should not be using these things late at night, but we are.
Yeah. Jim?
I was going to say I've used Flux on the Mac for years, and I've tried to. I think it helps, but it's not a cure-all, as Gene said. If you're sensitive to that and you're having trouble sleeping, turn the screens off well before bedtime. But going back to your question about disappointments, I'm not disappointed at all in the device for what it is. But my thought was, everybody's talking about how fast it is. All the online reviewers are in love with it. And it's true. It's significantly faster in many respects, and it's got a lot of potential. My disappointment is how Apple's segmented their market. You shouldn't be comparing this to the iPad Air 2. The iPad Air 2 is coming up on 2 years old. You should be comparing this to what would the iPad Air 3.5 be, if Apple had updated their product lineup. And so now we don't know what Apple's plans are for the Air. Are they going to leave the Air 2? Are they going to release an Air 3 at a lower price point? That'll really determine how we're going forward. But all we've done now is kind of, Apple's got $100 extra across the board if you want the newest generation tech at that size. And that's, I'm not sure how I feel about that, because the bigger screen on the Pro, on the 12-inch Pro, that kind of allowed you to go to a Pro. It made sense that it was going to a Pro designation. Taking that Pro designation down, I'm not necessarily opposed to it, but it used to start at $499. Now that size for the latest tech starts at $599. And is this truly significantly better than what Apple would have had in mind if they had continued to update the Air line and kept it at $499? So Apple's moves later this year will probably dictate how that shakes out. But right now I'm like, well, this was it necessary to do this? Or could Apple have gotten to this level of features and speed just following the natural progression without bumping the price up $100?
Jim, you would probably know better than I would, but I think that another consideration in that equation has to be the base amount of RAM, because I think that the base amount of RAM on the Air 2 was 16. I think.
Oh, you mean based around storage?
Sorry, storage. Yeah, sorry.
Yes, that is true. But for years now, that is, from a purely pricing perspective, that's a joke. That Apple is making Apple's cost for every year. The part suppliers break it down, and their competitors. So you can try to figure out what they're doing there. Apple's keeping the 16 gigabyte model. There was no cost. It's not going to cost them $100 to go to 32 from their bottom line, from their supplier costs. So the cost difference there is insignificant, I think, based on what their competitors are doing and what the suppliers are telling us, or the supply chain analysis are telling us. So obviously that's a factor. But from my perspective, and from a lot of people's perspective, Apple keeping 16 as the standard for so long was bad. Was not a good choice, because they didn't lower the price and cost of memory went down. So that is definitely a factor. I just don't think it's meaningful to make up the difference. So I guess in other words, Apple could have offered a 32 gigabyte iPad Air last year for the same $499 easily.
Okay. Yeah, and I guess I'm looking at it, flipping it over. I'm just looking at it. Okay, this is the pricing that's out there. So if you're going to compare 32 gig to 32 gig, you got to do it on both machines to see what the pricing was, and as opposed to getting the extra 100, profit margins and all that aside.
It's hard too, because Apple keeps their prices static. They don't generally lower prices in the middle of a product cycle. So unlike other manufacturers, the iPad Air at 16 gigabytes last year was the same price it was up until a week ago. So it's hard to kind of measure what's happening with Apple's costs there.
Right. Gene, any disappointments or anything you would like to see the iPad Pro 9 be that it's not for you?
Not so far. It's lived up to its billing. And one other thing, I don't have the iPad Air 2. I have the original, so I don't know. But I had heard this too, and I can definitely see the difference in the reflectivity of the surface itself. So it's much less glare off of the glass. I don't know how they do that.
Now that you say that, I've got to go back and look. I remember reading that, and maybe I just haven't been in an environment where it jumped out at me. But yeah.
Yeah.
It is reflective. It's just not as reflective.
Yeah.
And I'm not quite sure how they pull off that particular magic trick, but I assume it has to do with lasers. It always has to do with
Yeah, well, I'm holding them side by side, and I would say like the reduction of the bright, kind of glare from the light in the room is like it's I don't know, half at least. So it's very, very noticeable.
I haven't heard anybody here sound like they regret their purchase at all, or think is it something that you could all recommend to people as a great either upgrade or a great first iPad?
If you had an iPad Air or earlier, it's a no-brainer. This thing is fantastic. It's much, much nicer. I have no regrets.
Okay. Jim, no regrets?
No regrets from my perspective. I would say, depending on what you want to use it for, if you're really going to be an entry level, if this is for a parent or a non-tech savvy friend or relative, and all they want to do is very basic gaming, email, pictures, even though it's 2-year-old tech, again, talking about what the total cost of an iPad Pro 9 is, the iPad Air 2 is probably still a viable option for a couple more years, because just looking at how each version of iOS slows down on the older tech, it's still running fairly well. But if you have more significant ambitions for what you want to do on the device, yeah, absolutely, I'd recommend this. And unless I have not had a problem with the 2 gig of RAM versus the 4 on the 12-inch model. This is still very snappy. It loads reloads a web page very quickly, launches your apps. So unless you really want the big screen too, I think that save yourself a couple $100, and this is going to be more portable, as we've talked about, and just as fast in almost every regard, except for just the lack of real estate on the screen.
Okay, Gene?
The only thing, like I have this iPad, the Pro 12 to play with, and I'm going to try switching off between them and see if I, really decide. That was the only thing I wondered. It's like, well, you were pretty psyched to get the 12-inch, and now you're, equally psyched to get the 9.7. But I'm a little torn between those two things. But I figure, well, I'll play with. I have this opportunity to play with them both, which I wasn't expecting, and so that would be my only, regret, is that I didn't get the 12 to begin with. But I don't know. I mean, for one thing, the 12 does not fit into the bag that I currently have, and I would have to get a new bag. And that bag is not cheap, and and it's my favorite bag ever. So I would. That was one of the reasons I thought, yay, I can get the 9.7, and then I don't have to get a new bag.
Yeah. Gene, thank you for sharing that. It's those little things. I mean, it's like going to buy a car. If you get in a car and the seat is not quite right, it doesn't matter about the horsepower or anything else. You're not going to buy that car. And sometimes it's just those little creature comforts, idiosyncratic things that make all the difference in the world. So it's a great point, that you gotta test some of this stuff out and think about all the aspects of it. You're going to have to carry this thing around one way or another, in a backpack or in a briefcase or a purse or whatever, and you're probably going to have a case on it to protect it. So, people sometimes think that we spend a lot of time talking about cases, but this is an expensive device. I'm going to protect it in some way, and I want to find out the best way to do it. So, guys, thank you so much for being here. It's been interesting. Hopefully we've shed a little light, or at least we sure had a lot of fun, if nothing else. Let's go in reverse order and just remind people where they can find you, whether it's social media or your projects or whatever. Michael?
You can find my books at Take Control Books, and you can read my articles from time to time at tidbits.com.
Great. It's good to have you. Thanks for being here.
Pleasure.
Jim?
As I said at the beginning, you can find me every day at techreview.com. That's TEKREVUE.com, and occasionally over at the Mac Observer. And you can find me on Twitter at my handle there is MGGJim.
Great. And I want to put in a plug for Tech Review because it's a good balanced site. I really value your opinions, not just on the Mac world, but also on all the other platforms as well, because you keep it very balanced. So good job.
I try to piss off all parties equally, and that really, it works out for me.
Good to know.
Lovely strategy.
Good to know. Good to know. Gene?
Well, I'd love it if people would go to appcampforgirls.com. That's appcamp, the number 4 girls.com, and check out our new locations. Phoenix is going to be July 25th to the 29th, and Orange County is going to be August 8th through 12th. And we still have space in our Vancouver and Seattle camps, and also in our August Portland camp. So they will fill up. They always fill up, and we get a waiting list, by the time camp comes around. So if you know any girls who are going to be going into 8th or 9th grade who would like to have fun making apps this summer, because we always have a lot of fun at App Camp, please go there. And I'm MacGenie, MacGenie, on Twitter. And that's a great place to actually reach out to me. I do follow Twitter pretty closely, and I do respond.
Great. And that's, Gina, as important as all your work was with Smile, I think this App Camp for Girls is so much more important. So keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Yeah. Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is the MacJury on MacVoices. We hope we've given you enough information to go out and make a decision on your own iPad Pro 9.7. Let us know. You can find any of us, as they've all said, and me too, on Twitter. I'm Chuck Joyner on Twitter. We'd like to know what pushed you in one direction to the other, what you like, what you don't like, and why. Until the next time, and as always, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for links, show notes, to subscribe, to connect with Chuck on Twitter, Google+, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and the MacVoices blog. Subscribe to our weekly newsletter, the MacVoices Dispatch, to stay up to date on all the latest MacVoices news from our front page or at MacVoices.com/newsletter. Do more with your Apple tech by subscribing to the free MacVoices magazine on Flipboard, by visiting macvoices.com/magazine. Advertising and sponsorships handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.